Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Is how do we advance the ball down the field when it comes to these matters? I think we're all experiencing a measure of fatigue at the cyclical nature of these things, right? An event will happen, there will be grief and outrage, maybe even protests. Then all of a sudden, it just dies out, and then only to happen all over again. And I think we're fatigued with that, and we want to see some progress made. One of the ways that I like to approach it is, as I look at the Bible, there are three institutions that God has created for what Andy Crouch calls human flourishing. The family is the first, government is the second, and then there's the church. And I think if we're going to attack racism, both personally and systemically, all three of these institutions have to be in play. I think first, it's the family. And, we understand that racism it's a matter of sin. And so we're born into this world, Psalm 51, David says, sinners. But racism is a learned behavior. And when it comes to the family, I think we have to have a more robust vision of discipleship when it comes to our kids, where we don't just disciple them along soteriological lines, the doctrine of salvation and teaching my kids to pray and have a good quiet time and share their faith. We also have to hand them a robust anthropology in which we are. Angela Davis once said, the opposite of racist is not being racist, but the opposite of racist is actually being anti-racist.
That's right.
So it's not good enough to say, I'm not racist. We have to actually be very aggressive in the discipleship of our kids to cut this stuff off at the pass. And that's got to be modeled and taught in the home. And one of the challenges, I'm not just talking to white people about this or Asians about this, one of the challenges for me as a Black man is how to disciple my kids with a robust anthropology where we tackle these issues of race without instilling bitterness and suspicion in them at the same time. That is very, very hard. But it's something I've got to hand to my kids. Secondly is the government, real briefly, and that is pushing for legislation that's going to attack these demonic powers that have attached themselves to systems, and systems such as the government. So one of the things in Divided by Faith that Emerson and Smith attack, these two white Jesus-loving sociologists, is that the conservative evangelical narrative has always been matters of race is just kind of personal. And it's not just personal, it's also profoundly systemic. And the way that we can attack that is legislatively. And so I would say to everyone marching in the streets, thank you. But if you really want to make change, register to vote.
Amen.
And vote. Absolutely vote. Thirdly is the church. One of the things I'm grateful for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement is that, because of them, I can sit on any seat of the bus as a Black man that I want. I can drink out of any water fountain I want, sleep in any hotel that I want. But the shortcomings of the civil rights movement and the government is that while government can change laws, it can't change hearts. And that's where the Spirit of God and the institution of the church come into play. Because one of the promises of the new covenant in Jeremiah and Ezekiel, God says, here's how I'm going to provoke change. I'm going to do it from the inside out. I'm going to remove your heart of stone, give you a heart of flesh. And the second thing I would say about the church is not just salvation, but discipleship into a new beloved community. And just think of the power of the George Floyds worshiping with white police officers, sitting in small groups with them. My friend Eric Mason says, proximity breeds empathy, distance breeds suspicion. And so when I'm really doing life with people who don't look like me, act like me, think like me, and vote like me, now the generalizations and the stereotypes start to fall. And now there's empathy and understanding and love that takes its place.